The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the hosts and guests as individuals, and do not necessarily reflect those of advertisers or sponsors. This show is intended as entertainment and commentary only. The producers strive for verisimilitude, but nothing said on this podcast should be taken as fact by the listener or viewer without performing due diligence.
That existence, the physical universe, is basically playful. There is no necessity for it whatsoever. It isn't going anywhere. That is to say, it doesn't have some destination that it ought to arrive at.
This is Keep Your Hat On, a show by three nerdy nobodies and one nerdy kinda a somebody about nothing in particular. Keep Your Hat On is brought to you by the Narrow Band Broadcast Network. NBBN, the focus is on you. By Andrew Scott Media. And by the kind support of KYHO fans everywhere via Patreon. Patreon, create on your own terms. On this episode, Andrew wonders, is Elon the lesser of two evils or just evil?
Yes, that's true.
Dr. Mark goes in for horse feet. Chris goes 20 minutes into the future, and Robert goes missing. I'm your disembodied announcer, Mr. Brumage, and oh yeah, this bitch is back, baby. Now, let's get whatever the hell this is started. Here are your hosts, Andrew, Robert, Dr. Mark, and, yep, everybody's big old nostalgic buddy, Chris.
And hello and welcome back to Keep Your Hat On, the show where hell even we don't know where we're going to go. I'm Andrew Scott, I think, along with my good friend, Christopher Vacano, and Dr. Mark Peterson.
Ooh.
Ooh, yeah. And we are back. Sorry we went away. Well, no, not sorry we went away. We went away out of necessity. We had a number of things going on. It's been a very busy number of months, and I won't go into a whole lot of blah blah about it, except for that, gosh, we needed a break. And we needed a break for a number of different reasons. I'm seeing scary looking stuff on my waveform.
That's one of the reasons. Must be it.
Guys? Am I sounding all right to you guys?
As well as you ever do.
Yeah.
Well, I'm the audio professional. I should sound like the voice of God, for Christ's sake. Well, you know what? It's good enough, dude. Anyways, we are back. And we are back without our good dear brother of the hat, Ty Robert Anthony. He is preoccupied today, but he sends his love and regards, et cetera, et cetera. So what's been going on with y'all?
Well, I've been working your side of the street, Andy.
Yeah, I know. I got roped into this out of necessity, at least in a remote control fashion. Chris, why don't you give us the news?
Yeah, so I recently had a kidney stone and UTI, and
oh dear.
Boy, was that unpleasant. The Bactrim was just brutal. I mean, the drug was worse than the sickness. But
no, trust me, it's not.
But well, good point. But funny story about it. I went to see the doctor and got the UTI diagnosed, and he prescribed me the Bactrim. And thankfully, boy, this is part of getting older. I mean, I know I'm 50 now. Thankfully, I happen to have an adult undergarment on, and I'm standing in line at the Rite Aid waiting to get my prescription. And so, you know, up to that point that day, you know, I was doing okay. I was able to hold it, not having the urgency thing. And it hits me right in the middle of the line. And there is nothing like the feeling of that instant panic of, oh my God, I've got to go. You're looking around, no bathroom in sight. Then it's, oh my God, I'm going. And then you're looking around and you're like, oh, wait a minute. It's all good. Okay, look cool. You know, pretend nothing's going on.
And there's also that part of you in your brain going, but I'm in the middle of the line if I leave now.
Right.
Lose your spot.
Yeah,
I wonder now,
so that was my little adventure.
This has put me in mind, and I've had a lot of sympathy since I'm now 65 plus, and I have a lot of sympathy for my senior neighbors and colleagues. But it hadn't occurred to me that the contented look on their face in line at the pharmacy might be something different.
I immediately think of
they're all smiling, It's like, well, I can wait. I'm good.
It reminds me of the scene in Dirty Rotten Scoundrels where they're at the dinner table and it's Steve Martin is like, I got to go to the bathroom, and no, we're busy. We're not. And he just sits there, and suddenly you see him go. Well, Chris, glad you're better.
So am I.
From one brother of the kidney to another.
And a new marketing opportunity for Depends that I haven't even seen this one in the commercials yet. This is the thing,
Standing in line.
I can imagine standing in line, being on the bus.
We're looking for sponsors. We're always looking for sponsors.
Waiting at the DMV.
If you're out there.
Well, yeah.
Tell you what, folks, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back with the all-new, faster-paced Keep Your Hat On in just a second. Don't go anywhere. Boom. Okay, there. See? That was easy. I remembered the entire thing as soon as I said hello and welcome back. I was like, yeah.
It's like riding a bike.
3, 2, 1. And we are back. This is Keep Your Hat On. I'm Andrew Scott, along with Dr. Mark Peterson and Chris Vacano. And I have a question for both of you.
Yes?
Go for it.
Is Elon Musk an evil genius, or is he just evil?
Or a simulation of evil, or...
Right, yeah.
I don't even know now.
Well, I have a good friend of mine.
I'm thinking let's...
I have a good friend who brought up that he's never seen anybody burn through so much goodwill from the public so quickly.
Yeah, I mean that, and
remember when he first came out with Tesla with the cars, and he said, "I am not going to copyright protect any of my technology."
He sure did.
He really was. He was coming from or purporting to come from the open source community. Mm-hmm. This idea that technology should benefit everyone, and that if you build a good mousetrap, yet somebody else figures out a way to make it even better, don't you owe it to society to allow them to do so? And then suddenly, the next thing you know, well, not the next thing, years later, we're now being told that, oh, yeah, I know my satellites that are absolutely clouding up the night sky to the point where you can't see a star anymore, suddenly is really important to keeping people in Ukraine connected with the outside world and keeping information coming out of it. But we can't afford to do that for free anymore, says the world's richest or second richest, whatever number he is now.
And oh, by the way, he's been having little chats with Vladimir Putin.
Yeah. Yeah, he's
allegedly
been talking, back channeling Putin. You can make what you want of that analogy.
I mean, it's all very weird and hard to connect. Embedded in your question are two words: evil and genius. And honestly,
very good point.
I take exception to both words. I don't think he's either. I don't think he's particularly evil, and I don't think he's particularly a genius. I think Elon Musk is a very, very clever businessman. I'm
going to throw a word out there that I think matches really well, and that is astute.
He is astute. He knows how to read the tea leaves.
He does. I have a dear friend of mine that actually Mark met at one point in time, who shall remain nameless, who went to work at SpaceX.
Oh, no
and
kidding.
Worked at SpaceX for about 2 years. And he left SpaceX to go back to a line of work that he found out he was more interested in. It's not that he wasn't interested in working on rocket engines.
Yeah.
It's that he was not working on rocket engines in the environment that Musk had fostered for SpaceX.
Oh.
And I have very complicated feelings about it because I know a number of people that still work at SpaceX, and I believe in SpaceX's mission, but every time my friend said every time I talked with Elon in person, I felt like I needed to wash myself with bleach.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Go get that Silkwood shower. Yeah.
Right. Mark, what do you make of all this?
Yeah, so I'm always torn when I watch him. I was for many years married into a family filled with people on the autistic spectrum, so I've had a lot of practice. And I'm there.
Kids there, plenty of people are there,
and it's like Mr. Musk is clearly right. I think he's admitted this, right? Acknowledged this.
He's asked,
and it's like, and so in a lot of ways, the kind of emotional context that might play out in people without, who are a little bit further off the spectrum than he is, that context is just missing for him. So he just sees things as sort of, as a rule. I mean, my observation is too. So forget about his cognitive structures, but he just seems to see things in terms of the algorithms, right? And it's like nothing else really matters around that. Yeah,
it's something. I'm going to bring this topic up again, but it's almost like experiencing a little bit of the uncanny valley when you watch him talk, because he looks like a human being. He's making face sounds, but there's something there, like you say, Mark. It's almost like he's looking back at you through the curtain of the Matrix.
He's almost kind of a Westworld host.
Very much. And all these are your numbers.
I'm reminded, if I wanted to talk about what would or wouldn't make him evil, I always go immediately to Hannah Arendt's definition about evil as banal, right? The banality of evil. And what she had in mind sort of triggers with watching him send giant dildos into space, and buying Twitter and so on. And that's that the nature of this, the kind of evil that she was describing in the Nazi regime was not like Himmler and the guys in the camps who were actually shoveling people into ovens and stuff. It was the officious, efficient, and clever little men in Berlin who were working on train schedules to try to maximize the efficiency of the process.
Yes, take the humanity out of it and look at it merely as a system.
Right, and
then the benign indifference.
Yeah, then you have all these guys that had a really good day at work because they figured out how to how to increase the throughput. And now that they go out for a beer afterwards, and then they go home, and Inga has made pot roast, and life is a really good day. And it's like I think Musk thinks about things in that same kind of, well, look, let's see how we can get now, whether it's right or wrong. See, so I'm still kind of hung up on the idea whether it's right or wrong for private individuals to be sending spaceships into space. I mean, I think this has to be governmental. I think it has to be a planetary agreement, because the amount of junk that's up there now is going to keep us. Yeah, it's going to keep us from going up in another 10 years.
They just had to move the International Space Station by about a half a kilometer because of a Russian piece of space junk that at one point in time was a Russian satellite that the Russians used for target practice with a missile.
It's the scatter field now, right? Of
anti-satellite practice that just created. I mean, it's literally like standing on a bridge over an overpass and throwing, a giant handful of screws down at traffic.
Yeah,
it's just a huge wash of material that's now orbiting the Earth.
So, the fact that one man can do that, and he, if you can do that, then you don't really seem to be concerned about the long-term stuff. He made all the noise when it came to Tesla, initially, right?
Yeah.
And they're poised now. I mean, it's every car company is moving to electric here in the next few years, right? As a rule.
Yeah, and it's we're starting to see that tide turn in favor, really favorably towards electric vehicles. One thing I'd like to point out is there's also kind of this this mythology of Elon that surrounds him. And for example, the sort of average person, I think, is under the misimpression that Elon started Tesla. No, Tesla existed.
Right,
He bought
exactly.
it. And this is what Elon does: is he buys companies, changes their trajectory, helps them grow. He's essentially, for lack of a better way of describing it, he's essentially a really effective, really capable angel investor.
Well, I would say that he's actually a really effective, really capable hatchet man.
Well,
remember how we used to refer to corporate axemen who would go in there, look at the entire company from the top down, and find who to kill.
Yeah,
find who to eliminate.
And that's definitely what appears to be happening at Twitter. There's talk of 75,000 layoffs, or 7,500. Some absurd number.
About 70% of the Twitter workforce is getting cards to go home. And I follow somebody on Twitter who actually had the intestinal fortitude to say, I was just personally fired by Elon Musk. I have been at Twitter for 12 years, hit my DMs, willing to talk, screw the NDA.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So,
awesome.
I mean, that's going to be really interesting. I'm a very lax Twitter user. I read Twitter more than I use Twitter. I use Twitter mostly for my own brands and projects and things like that. But I mean, I've fallen very far away from social media, except for my presence here with you guys on YouTube and a few other things that I do.
Well, and
just because of the level of toxicity that it engenders in me,
well,
I feel bad every time I use it.
This is what's interesting to me is the old pillars of social media are starting to crumble. I mean, Facebook and Twitter are in decline. Twitter is clearly in decline, and I almost wonder. I don't think anybody really knows what the end game is, and maybe Elon doesn't know. But I wonder if the end game on Twitter is not to save it, but to destroy it.
I'm not surprised to hear you say that, and I am not dismissing that either.
Well, that would make him not evil, I would think. That would make him good.
Unless here, I'll tell you what Elon's real end game is. And that is, he doesn't even know. He just wants to be at the end of the rainbow. He just wants to be what people find after the dust settles. And I'm going to say this. I'm going to not be comfortable saying it, but I'm going to say it. I believe that Musk has political dreams.
I think that's pretty clear. He's telegraphing that pretty hard at this point.
I mean, he's doing it really. I mean, he's doing it with a little bit more finesse than somebody else in our recent past.
Than recent presidents.
But I just, the altruism is gone. The magnanimity is gone. I got to say magnanimity up there. Yeah, again, he's burned through most social capital and goodwill, yet he keeps this moving forward because, more than anything, because he's got this cult following of people who idealize him. And again, where have we seen that in the
right? Exactly. Although I wonder if I don't disagree. I think it's very clear he's got maybe not political aspirations, but aspirations to power. And the reason I make that distinction is I'm not sure whether he wants to become the guy that's pulling the levers of the political machine, i.e. the president or whatever goal you choose to pick, or if he wants to be a kingmaker.
Well, he already has more money than God. If he wants to buy senators, he can do that now. I mean, right?
Yeah, and my thing is, I do, Chris, think that you're onto something, because the one thing that, and we're discovering this now, if you've been paying attention to what's been going on in Washington lately, and that is, even as the president, there's accountability, and there's accountability primarily because of your visibility.
Mm-hmm.
So being president, as Mark and I used to riff when having cigarettes in between classes back in the day, we came up with this idea, and it's not an original idea. We just thought it was hilarious that we should pick presidents out of the phone book. Remember those?
Oh, yeah. Still a good idea, by the way.
Because we had the whole thing set up. You would, your office would be in a disused Motel 8 on the interstate. And you would only be able to eat takeout food from 5 different restaurants.
Yeah.
And make it be a misery. Yeah. Make it be something people don't want to do, but they fulfill their obligations and then they get out.
Yeah, a very platonic notion of
very
president.
Platonic, because at that point, really the only way out is to satisfy people, because our punishment for doing a bad job was to keep you in power.
What you're describing is enforced servant leadership.
Yes, exactly right. But what I think is going on with Elon is that he just wants to engineer or game the entire system so that he's the one making the decisions and setting the trajectory. But then when shit goes sideways and people aren't happy, they can't point at him.
Yeah.
And I just think of the self-driving car thing. It's a perfect model, because at the end of the day, when some poor person gets run over, they can blame the car and not the company.
Right.
So the whole thing is kind of meta in a way that we're going to get into a little bit further in one of our upcoming segments. But speaking of that, we're going to step away. We're going to come right back. Dr. Mark is up next. Don't go anywhere. Bye.
Ooh.
Out. Yeah, no, that was good. Tighter's better.
I wonder, though, it's like we might be overthinking him too, right? Which is that he's just another rich guy who likes money.
And we're back for the next segment of Keep Your Hat On. I'm Andrew Scott, along with Christopher Picano and Mark and his new obsession.
Oh, and the dreadful confession, guilty pleasure component of Keep Your Hat On tonight. Well, let's encourage our listeners to supply their own weirdness. I've had a couple of very and to me alarming bits of, we were talking about social media before. The algorithm on Facebook kicked up a couple of really odd things for me in the Reels section, which worries me about what my algorithm is saying. One of them was over the summer, I think we talked about this before, streamers, World of Warcraft streamers.
Right.
That Vanguard, that's been a problem for me. And so I spent a little time every day over the summer, take about half an hour watching some of these wackos go at it. And it was they've got everything set up now, the dialogue is great. It's like watching really good commentary, and you sort of wish you were playing, but you're not good enough to play. Well, that was bad enough, but we're not done. And what happened, out of the blue about a month ago on the Reels, which, it's interesting. Have you noticed this? People have complained about this. Instagram, Facebook, like you were saying, Chris, they're running more ads now, right? And it's like they're trying to suck you in. And what I hate is that I know this and it's working. So,
Right.
and so here's the one that got me here this last month, and I've kind of just gotten, not fixated, but I'm sufficiently fixated that it bothers me that I'm watching them. Ready? It is farriers, a word I only got to ever use in Scrabble. Farriers, farriers. People
also known as horseshoers.
Horseshoers, yeah, baby.
Okay.
And there's a whole new subgroup of videos apparently on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and God and everywhere, where they just show people reshoeing horses. And there's something like stupefyingly soothing about this, and it actually makes you want to get a pedicure or something.
Right. No, that's what I said earlier today when you brought. I was like, it just makes me want to get petty.
Yeah, there's something peculiar. But now there are all these other ones, which, of course, now what happened was once I clicked on these, and they've been fun. There are some grotesque ones, right, where they show you, infected hooves, and oh, baby. Well, there's this, because I clicked on one of those, the algorithm also decided I needed to see, the pimple popping subcategory of
the Dr. Pimple Popper,
and the earwax removal category of.
Now wait, earwax removal is hilarious.
Sure, Andy.
You did a video of one of those guys in like Bangalore.
Oh yeah, no, and China's got, they're full. Those guys have got a whole thing down, man.
Yeah, they're pushing it in there like, it looks like blue silly putty, and then they're supposed to just rip it out, but this gets stuck, and this whole guy.
Things. So here's the thing. It's like, so no, I have not, I'm gratified to let you know that I have not gone completely, I have not become addicted to earwax.
Bet you didn't plan on saying that today.
No, or ever. It's another one to add to the list of things I never thought I would say. Including
I already got the thumbnail for this video.
By the way, including why, yes, I'd love another peanut butter and mayonnaise sandwich. I never thought I'd say that either out loud. Okay.
They're delicious.
There are some people, have we talked about this? Because this is the thing.
I have.
Oh, well, maybe we have. It's like, there's a cluster of us in North America who were fed peanut butter and mayonnaise sandwiches. And we are anathema to the peanut butter and jelly crowd, aren't we?
A little bit.
It's
I both ways, but
it's a strange
I
thing.
gotta be in the mood for peanut butter and mayonnaise.
Well, so back to horse feed. They also do cows. And what I found about this is that it's delightfully soothing to watch a couple of these. And it's like the horse feels better afterwards. Now, I avoid the grotesque ones where they dig in and they hit the they pop. Yeah, it's not good.
Okay, I'm fine. Everything's fine.
But so while I've enjoyed watching, because like I never knew how to do this with a horse or a cow, like just in case of emergency, I may one day need to shoe a horse. And
got that part of your head going, I might need to use this, and now I'm trained.
Right. I was a Boy Scout, and there's things you want to know, and this might be one of them. And it's like, even though I'm never going to need to know these things again, right? Somehow it still feels appropriate. Now, so, okay, fine. It's bad enough that I'm interested in this. What I really am interested in, and I wish we could find this out, is why so many people are. And I mean, this is a huge subcategory inside all of the media properties right now. It's like, and there's a lot of production involved in this, which meant these people who are shoeing, but you actually work for a living. These are people just like taking pictures of cows' feet, and it's like, it's not OnlyFans. I suppose there's an OnlyFans site for cow feet. There's bound to be, isn't there? There's bound to be.
And a Tumblr.
Proud if the OnlyFans company merged with the Farmers Only company, so it'd be Farmers Only.
Wow. TM. So I'm just always amazed at what happens in the universe. I always thought I grew up in the 70s. I thought I was fairly sophisticated. No, turns out that's not true.
I think a lot of it has to go, I mean, we're living in this post-pandemic, even though the pandemic's not over. By the way, get your boosters. We're living in this world now where we learned something from the pandemic and from lockdown and isolation. And that is, there's so much more media than we assumed at first. We were still coming out of the model of, we had our big networks, and then we had our larger media platforms, and we thought that was it. Once you binged everything on Netflix and started looking around YouTube and all these other social media platforms, and realized there's so much more really interesting stuff that you've never been privy to, never seen.
Right.
For me, it was things like, and I'm a woodworker after a fashion. I can't claim to be anything other than just a hobbyist. But wood lathe videos for me at the beginning of the pandemic, watching somebody take a gnarled up piece of, spalted root
there's
and
something
turn it
exquisite about that, isn't there?
And there's also something very soothing about watching somebody, here's the arete word, watching somebody do something
beautifully,
excellent.
Right? Yeah, with excellent skill and the rest.
And I think we get a dopamine hit when we watch it, and it sticks in our head, and then we kind of go, and now, in the event of an emergency, I should probably be able to do that, which is completely and utterly wrong, but we love feeling that way.
Maybe.
When you break it down this way, you've actually just given me a really, really optimistic thought about humanity and about ourselves.
Oh, that wasn't my intent.
No, but there is
from Calfee to optimism. Go, boy, go.
I see a really optimistic thought here, which is that maybe, just maybe, we're discovering that our real lives, the banal day-to-day things we do, our hobbies, our interests, what we as virtually anonymous individuals in the world have to show off about ourselves, is more interesting than what the gatekeepers have been feeding us for so long and telling us to be interested in.
That was that was the ideal of the social media in the beginning, right? I mean, I will give you another example. I had one of my musician friends put me on to a guy on Instagram. I think it's Dust to Digital, and it's have you seen it?
Yeah.
It's like a collection of exotic and eccentric musicians from all over the world, amateurs. Just 20 seconds of each one, and it's
blowing your friggin' mind.
Oh, it's fantastic stuff. And it's like, and I won't even tell you, one of my other buddies who is a cellist, wannabe, apparently TikTok has its own cello channel.
Oh yeah.
So so Chris, maybe there's a point about the optimism there.
I mean, it feels like
I'm gonna actually side with you, Chris. I think there is something very optimistic here. At least if you're not getting optimism out of it as a consumer, I will feel optimistic. And I've said this a number of times in past episodes too. I'm all for killing off our old ideas and models of media because, as you said, Chris, I'm vastly more interested and motivated in seeing real people, not what I'm told is interesting, what I find interesting.
Or what you're told are the stories of real people. What you're told is going on out in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, Miami Vice is not real.
Wow, Chris, you're going back to Miami Vice?
Wow. Sure. Well, it just happened to be top of mind.
It's weird. That's the third Miami Vice reference for me today. But to be serious, I think you're absolutely right in that we're at, oh God, I hate saying this. We are at this nexus point.
A crossroads.
An inflection point. Yeah.
Where, let's get them all out there. Where we're finally, as your average human beings, thanks to this dumb thing, which is as much a ball and chain as it is a path to freedom.
It's our liberator. I mean,
because all you need to make really good content, as I sit here in a half a garage filled with lights and very expensive bleepity things. All you really need to make good content and reach people is a halfway decent mobile phone.
Mhm.
And yeah, again, I've gone through the last 8 months of my life building this into a YouTube studio because I do another thing, link below, I guess, maybe if you care. Look at that. I'm so bad with my brand carrying. I don't even mention my
Come on. Brand up, baby.
It is called Booth Camp. I do training and, quite frankly, cheerleading for the home voiceover community, which is what I do for a living. But really, the barrier to entry into being a content creator and putting your story out there to the wider world is as low as it's ever been. And there's some great stuff that's coming out of it. I mean, everybody knows who Mr. Beast is, and even Mr. Beast is, I mean, that young man is giving away millions and millions and millions of dollars to people who need it.
Yeah.
It just so happens that the way he's doing it is very entertaining.
Mhm.
But you've also got people like Mark Rober, the guy who does the Christmas glitter bombs.
I love those.
But he's
Those were good.
also teaching us about science.
He's teaching us about engineering.
Yeah.
You got people like Rob Scallon, who is a musician down just south of the border from you, Mark. He's right in the Rockford, Illinois area.
Oh, out in the middle of nowhere.
Phenomenal musician. Took you on an hour-long tour inside a pipe organ. And not only that, they figured out how to connect the pipe organ to his computer via MIDI to play mental stuff. But watching him literally climbing around inside the guts of a pipe organ, that's vastly more interesting to me than anything that's on television. That's anything that's been given to me by a big network. And frankly, I'm thankful for the change.
I am too, because I think we're finally realizing the potential that we've all been talking about for the last 30 years of the internet. What I think this inflection point is that we're seeing the democratization of culture. And as an institution, what should be more democratic than culture? Because culture is made up of individuals.
I tell you what,
all of us.
When we come back from the break, we're going to take a hard left-hand turn because I think it holds hands very well with what we're talking about now. Don't go anywhere. This is Keep Your Hat On. I'm Andy. That's Mark. That's Chris. We'll be back. We are under an hour already. We're back for the final segment of Keep Your Hat On. I'm Andrew Scott, along with Dr. Mark Peterson and Chris Vacano, and we were just talking about the democratization of culture and, frankly, the democratization of media and creating it. And I'm not picking a bone with you, Chris, but I think that your optimism here might be coloring the reality of what's going on in this regard. The way I see it is this. Us Gen X and Boomer people, we grew up with media, with television primarily, with a little bit of radio thrown in there. Radio was the place where you could get away with shit until they were all bought up.
It's also where the music was.
Exactly.
Until
right.
MTV came along.
until MTV came along as a disruptor for a while. And, you know, I mean, that's still one of my favorite jokes. The annual celebration of the birth of MTV, you know, here in 2022 is, you know, hey, it's MTV's birthday. Thanks for 11 years of music.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But, you know, when you talk about media and you talk about mass media and modern media, we were effectively for generations, all the way back to when TV first became a thing, and Dr. Mark will attest to this, you know, TV was a vehicle for advertising.
Yeah, it was about the commercials.
Because of advertising. And if you didn't do advertising, you needed to have a foundation or some kind of benefactor behind you so you could run commercial free. And, you know, if you ever go down the rabbit hole of reading the Illuminati series, we of course have
Wilson.
Fnord.
Yep.
Fnord. Really, we all were aware that we were being advertised to.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, we allowed that to become part of our culture to the point where certain advertisements are now, and even were back then, cultural touchstones. They were things that, you know, I mean, I hate to say it, I can still say the list of ingredients for a McDonald's Big Mac backwards.
I can sing the song.
Well,
I think Barry Manilow wrote that, didn't he?
Did he really?
On onions, pickles, cheese, lettuce, sauce, special patties, beef, all two.
Oh.
Why is there room in my gray computer for that? And it's just that became a cultural phenomenon that my sisters and I just decided to do backwards.
Wow.
But we've got all the brands and slogans, and, you know, Mark and I are of Wisconsin to one degree or another. And of course, we had all the Miller Lite commercials back in the day. Well, yeah, you am now. You am mostly, son.
Yeah.
You are mostly Wisconsin.
Yeah.
But where I'm going with this is there was a change that started happening in the mid to late 80s. And of course, this does hold hands with the rise of computer communication. I didn't say the internet yet. I said communication.
Go on. Do tell.
It wasn't really available to us. We were on FidoNet if we were lucky.
Yeah, I mean, BBSing was...
With the rise of that and the rise of writers, futurists, books like, you know, Neuromancer and
William Gibson.
Snow Crash, man.
It was transformative.
Snow Crash. You know, we had these people. We had these. I don't even want to say they're fiction writers, because I think that minimizes what they were bringing to the table.
Yeah.
We had these speculative writers looking into the future, and sometimes not looking all that far into the future, like maybe 20 minutes into the future.
Oh, segue.
And of course, thank you for noticing.
Well done.
That brings us to one of the most interesting cultural phenomena of the 80s that still gets referenced today. But I really think that even going all the way back then, if you were just the hippest kid around, you still didn't really get it. And that is Max Headroom.
Max?
You don't even do that well. Okay, neither do I. Neither does anybody.
Nobody does. Matt Frewer does that really well.
Exactly right. And Chris, you did a little dive into it, and that's going to lead to a slightly larger discussion.
Sure.
But I am one of these people where back when Max Headroom was breaking, I was involved. I was a club DJ and a musician and a couple other things, but I was involved in the culture where video mashing was becoming a thing, where people were getting a hold of technology that, if used properly, could mash video together on the fly, real time, or with very little lag. I was involved as a DJ in environments where they were doing a lot of video projections. So I knew a lot of these people. I also ran really weird hours. And I also lived right north of one of the largest broadcast markets in the world, Chicago. And On a good night, we could get WGN or a number of other Chicago terrestrial television broadcasting stations. And I would watch one of them because they would play Doctor Who at an hour where I was available to see it.
And that was WTTW. Yeah.
WTTW.
Yep.
And something very infamous happened that I have the honor to say I watched happen in real time. And Chris, why don't you pick this up and give us a quick rundown of what went on?
Yeah. So on the night of November 22nd, 1987, a unknown individual hijacked first the WGN signal during the primetime news, during the sportscast, and
Talk about the Bears.
yeah,
Bears.
talking about the Bears, and was interrupted. Signal cut out, goes black for about 15 seconds, and then someone wearing a max headroom screen, and this is decidedly, I mean, if you see the video, it's decidedly
Yeah, I'm sure I'll dump the video
low
in here
production quality, but it was very much of the UHF kind of ilk that was going on at the time.
Here, to throw one thing in there, max headroom was already a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Max headroom comes from a movie literally called
20 minutes.
Max Headroom, 20 minutes into the future. So he was just really cresting this wave of popularity and notoriety.
Yeah.
And so the Max Headroom that they put on WGN was not that Max Headroom.
This was not that Max. This was not the legit Max Headroom. And yeah, there was a TV series that ran for a year. I mentioned that's why Miami Vice was top of mind, is because Miami Vice beat
you were deep in the 80s, baby.
Well, knocked Max Headroom off of the air. I mean, beat it in the ratings, and that was the end of it.
Yeah. It was the pastels.
It was.
Yeah, the linen suits. So he interrupts, and the WGN engineers, they were there, they were on the ball, they got the signal back within about 30 seconds.
WGN was the third largest broadcaster in the country.
Yeah, and incidentally, in my digging, I didn't actually realize this because I'm from the West. I grew up in Colorado and have lived on the West Coast. I had no idea WGN was actually owned by the Chicago Tribune,
right. World's greatest newspaper. WGN.
Yeah, exactly. WGN stands for World's Greatest Newspaper, which is important because it actually gets mentioned in the second hit that happened on the same night, 2 hours later.
This is the one that I saw firsthand.
Where the same hacker broke in, and I use the term loosely because, I mean, it was a hack, but not in the way that we think about it today.
We'll come back to that in a second, but go ahead.
Yeah, broke into the Doctor Who signal on WTTW. And that
WTTW was a
PBS channel.
Yeah, the local PBS affiliate. And those engineers had gone home for the night. So the entire message ran, and then he returned the signal back.
Well, I'm going to do this message
because it was a very stream of consciousness.
It got so weird so fast. I was a weird person at the time, and it was beyond my level of weirdness. We have sex toys, we have spankings,
yes,
we have references to things that even I didn't know of then.
Well, and there's a really bizarre shot taken at the then announcer for the Chicago Bulls, Chuck Swirsky. Which, I mean, Chuck Swirsky, totally benign guy. He just did the play-by-play call for the Bulls. I mean, so there was this weird sideways broadside attack on him. It was just sort of all over the map, stream of consciousness. I mean, it was like trying to read Ulysses on crack.
It was the definition of surreal.
Yeah.
And where that brings me to is a couple things. First off, in my mind, culturally, this is the first and look, people, they used to have They used to have terrestrial broadcast hijacking happen every once in a while,
Yeah,
but it would
wasn't that
normally
common?
no, it would normally be a very small station, underpowered, and broadcasting out of what they referred to as a shallow tower.
Mhm.
And it was not that big a deal. And of course, the FCC would go out and scold somebody. This is the first time in modern history that somebody as big as WGN, let alone TT, it was somebody as big as WGN had their signal taken away from them at the height of the Cold War.
Yeah.
And it really scared the pants out of pretty much everybody.
It's
Now
like
we don't have
shockwaves because they were worried that military signals were vulnerable.
Mhm.
But the other thing that this did is it was the first time a big segment of the culture understood what hacking was. Now, we did have hackers back in those days, but they were normally rather disaffected people that worked in the industries that they affected.
Yeah.
It wasn't that big a deal.
It was guys like
But-
Richard Mitnick figuring out how to steal phone calls, you know.
Exactly right.
the
Yeah.
days.
Or redlining or war driving or all these
Yeah.
sorts of little things. But this was the first time that a hack impacted the public. And it really, in my mind, is the watermark of where hacking made itself known in public consciousness. Now, to move forward from this, what's really, really interesting to me now is that our buddy Max Headroom is headed back to us. For those of us who watched, I still personally feel like Max Headroom went over everybody's head. Everybody's head. Even those of us who think that we know and think that we got it, didn't quite get it.
He
And
was
it
still
took
20 minutes ahead of us.
He was
There's
still-
always
exactly
20
right.
minutes ahead of us.
The thing that it took me the better part of 20 years to really grok is, and everybody's got their theory. Max Headroom was pointing towards corporatization and privatization of information. And, what Max Headroom really was pointing us to the fact that we are all not who we think we are. And Max Headroom is, to go back to use a term I did before, it is the personification of the uncanny valley. Everybody is not who they think. It is so much more meta than I understood it to be when it was first on. That's why it didn't last, because it was funny, it was interesting, and people thought it was computer generated. It wasn't. It was an actor. But where it winds up bringing us is it wasn't any of those things.
Yeah.
And we started to get uncomfortable like we do with the uncanny valley.
Yes, we got
and then
uncomfortable because
we wanted something more comfortable, so we went and watched Miami Vice because we wanted to see what it looked like to look cool.
Yeah. And I think you really hit the nail on the head as to why Max didn't take hold then is we weren't ready to receive the message. We weren't ready to be told that we're not who we think we are because we're defining ourselves in terms that have been given to us by others. And within a framework that has been provided for us. And this comes back to what we were talking about before the break about democratization of culture. I mean, the two things really go hand in hand because now we're at least farther along in the path to where we can start exploring that question and asking the question, who are we really?
But here's the thing with the democratization of culture, just as with democracy, and unfortunately, we're really learning that now.
I think
democracy makes people uncomfortable.
I think I've given Dr. Mark an aneurysm.
No, it's like, I hang out with all these Jungians, right? And, yes, not only does having, see, the way, I've been thinking about this for like 50 years now, which is like completely alarming to me. But I think I'm right about
Why I
this.
keep hanging out with
Yeah,
you.
dude. But I think I figured this out pretty early on. This is too much Martin Buber and Kierkegaard, but I and also the Song of Solomon, I think I'm going to say. But
Good choice.
the one thing that seems to be absolutely clear to me is that nobody really wants wisdom. And they will do anything. And by this, I really mean just awareness of who we really are. So to go to your thing, Chris, in order to get to who we really are, there are the culture has created all sorts of rituals and mediations and sublimations in order to make that not just comfortable but possible, because it's typical and palatable. Well, yes, palatable.
Yes.
Because it is not palatable, as I know you guys know this. Being confronted with who you are is just awful. It's worse than watching pus being drained out of cow feet.
I will watch pus being drained out of a cow hoof any day.
What if we do that? And so I wonder, frankly. So you talk about the democratization of culture. There's going to be a horrific resistance and reaction to this, and I wonder if that might not be what we're seeing now, because our current political situation, regardless of where you happen to land, it's all about making up angry stuff and screaming it, and then discovering that there's a lot of other people who like it.
Exactly. And
this is exactly the kind of reaction you would expect, when you do an intervention on a culture. You go, we really love you, but this thing you've got for algorithms and cow hooves is a problem. And people will lose their shit when you say that to them. Anyway, I think that's, it's where we go. I'm always reminded too, Chris, and this is what's left of my elitism, which is that democracy is by definition the rule of the mob.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's always going to be dangers attached to that. I'm also a believer in it, by the way.
I tend to agree. In fact, I don't disagree.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a certain reverent tone in my voice whenever I say the D word. But I also recognize the risks and dangers of it. And it
digital? Is that
democracy.
I'm glad you defined that, Chris, because if somebody tuned in right now, they were going to be thinking something very different.
The D word.
It goes back to, if you spent any time reading the classics, which I encourage everybody to do, the hoi polloi have the power. They just don't know it because a few very clever people have convinced them otherce.
Right.
Like Elon Musk. It's him.
That's the whole game.
And Shia LaBeouf.
And actually, to go a step further, the hoi polloi want it that way so that they don't have to deal with the power. They don't have to deal with the responsibility.
And they don't have to think about it.
They don't have to think, period. Full stop.
So, the violence that we're seeing to common sense and so on, that's all the sort of stuff you would expect a reactive consciousness to cough up, like the fur ball of self-consciousness hacked up into the public sphere. How about that?
Mm-hmm.
Freedom makes people nauseous.
And that could be a new TikTok channel.
That could be a new slogan for Keep Your Hat On. Come experience our freedom and our nausea. I'm really interested though in the reboot. I think it'd be a reboot of Max Headroom because of all people, it is being piloted by Elijah Wood. And I found Elijah Wood post Hobbits to be an absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, he was really
interesting stuff.
Yeah.
And it's one of those where I'm going to give that some space. By the way, the other fascinating thing about this is that Matt Frewer is coming back as Max Headroom. They're not doing this whole, it's a reboot in every way except for we're not bringing the actual person back.
Yeah.
No. It's Max Headroom 40 years into the future now.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be interested in seeing it because The one thing that I think as we wrap up that I'm going to leave with people is I think we all agree that we weren't ready for max headroom then. I think we might be ready for max headroom now, because everything about that show that made no sense to anybody back then, hello Blipverts, is actually something that we're all steeped in, living in now.
Yes, we live in that dystopia now.
Yeah, it's just not as grimy and Blade Runner-y.
Yeah, made for television.
Well, it will be. Just give it a few more years. That Antarctica is going to melt and Greenland's going to melt, and then we'll be there.
And we're all up to our nuts in ocean. Yeah, you're right. Well, I tell you what, everybody, that's what we got for you this time. This is the return of Keep Your Hat On. Programming note, we are going to be doing this once a month. We would much rather be able to do it once a month with quality than twice a month the way it was. There, I just said it out loud.
Out loud.
We will be back in December with our Christmas episode. I think we already did Krampus, so we're not going to do that. But until next time, everybody, I'm Andrew Scott. That's Dr. Mark Peterson. That's Chris Vicano. And on behalf of Ty Robert Anthony, remember, keep your hat on. We may end up miles from here. Thanks a lot, everybody. Talk to you again soon. Get your shots, and bye-bye.
Well, there's a chunk of time you can't get back. From Portland, Oregon and Milwaukee, Wisconsin, this has been Keep Your Hat On, a big little show about a whole lot of nothing in particular. Keep Your Hat On is a narrow-band broadcast network production in association with AndrewScottMedia.com. Andrew Scott, executive producer. Robert Anthony and Chris Vicano, associate producers. Our theme music was written and produced by Andrew Scott, along with guitar help from Ron Kajawa. Website design and maintenance by Vicano Creative. Chris Vicano, webmaster. Available at VicanoCreative.com. Audio and video production by Andrew Scott. Available at AndrewScottMedia.com. Got ideas or comments for the show? Email us at talkback@kyhopodcast.com. And don't forget to like, click, and subscribe. On behalf of the boys, I'm your announcer, Mr. Brumage. Thanks for listening. I guess.
Some dry clothes.
Because he's a freaking nerd. I think I'm gonna check Swarovski. Working with
NBBN, the Narrowband Broadcast Network. The focus is on you.